to your computer, because
Yeah,
if you
on the
record to
computer.
the cloud, you have to go hunt it out of Chance's account because Zoom won't let you
Ah,
share who
no,
gets
no.
recordings.
Yeah, because I messed up, like I messed up the timing of this call and only three people are here. And I also messed up the calendar thing because I didn't move Chance's one, but I created a new one. Like I did everything wrong. I am very bad at being a facilitator.
But you're here, and
Yeah,
also you scheduled it on a holiday that both of you are working, which I think is particularly entertaining. Um,
yeah.
I'm not working on a holiday. It is not a holiday in Canada. It is just Monday.
I'll take it on Friday, then I have a long weekend.
Yeah. Could have had a long weekend last weekend, except interviews. Anyways.
So the thing that I shared that we could talk about, I think we also briefly talked about this before, Igor, like that you're like, yeah, that this is something that is being asked of us to set like a direction for a group. And it's very nice that Stephanie and I can like, yeah, talk about this. So the way we did this is like in three.
So
So
much
the
harder for you
document
to do.
the document that I linked here is kind of like the where we are now, like the result that we have now, and that's kind of like the thing that we presented to Liam, like this is what we would like to do. You already know this, but now here you have it in writing.
Hmm.
The way we got to that document was three sessions of about, I don't know, half an
I mean,
hour,
they
an
were
hour.
scheduled for an hour, but they were probably an hour and a half because Bob and I are incapable of talking to each other for the amount of time listed on our things.
Yeah, we also kind of like had tangents and stuff. First session was like a brainstorm session, all the things that we would like to have, dreams and
Hmm.
hopes and dreams, we called it last time. Then we had like a session where we kind of wanted to structure that and put things like in buckets.
Ask
See if there was a
questions,
yeah,
see what made sense, start to narrow it down a little bit more.
yeah. And then our conclusion was like we want to build a platform. Uh, and then we worked with Claude to put that into a document that looks impressive, but
Hmm.
doesn't have pictures yet because Claude is not that good at it.
And we
What's the no bullshit version of it?
uh the no bullshit version of it is we need to have
All of the
we're
stuff that we
always
now do for observability needs to be more coherent and more predictable.
correct
That's the
and more findable. So
yeah.
all the things we do now, we're never going to get to a point where we own all the observability of all the people that use at GitLab. Um, Trying to say, okay, we're going to have a single pane of glass for everything is probably not the
Gonna
right
work.
aim, I guess, is kind of the thing. The thing is, we need to have the information in all of our pieces be standardized so it's easier to look for the same thing. So, like if you're looking for a status code, it should be named roughly the same thing in
Yeah.
everywhere. Um, we need to have things be findable. We need to have a coherent way for people to search things, and we need to have an easier way for people to update and manage all of their pieces. So it's essentially all the things we've been talking about, except now we're calling it the platform.
Hmm.
How's that for the no bullshit version?
That works.
And
Cool.
it started from the question like, what do you want to be doing in 3 years? And what we didn't want to be doing was answering the same questions. How do I add an SLI? How do I set
Yeah.
an SLO? Uh,
Hmm.
those kind of things, but rather have interesting conversations like the ones that we've been having, Igor, like with what would be a good way to calculate availability. That's a fun thing to do. Or how do
That's a
we,
fun conversation.
yeah, or figure out how to make this thing that we want to build easier to use and work on that.
So this is for like the log processing engine.
Yes, for example.
Yeah, log processing, it's tracing if we had that.
Yes, please.
It's yeah, the other thing that also came up and I continue to be like one of the things I said to Bob is I want to be able to answer any question that anyone asks about how GitLab works, which
Uh,
might include things like my example was, and I want to put this somewhere because I think this is the best example of this. I'm not gonna say it's the stupidest thing, but it is kind of stupid. If somebody said I want to do something like what is it, the Shopify Unwrapped or whatever that is, or sorry, the
the
Spotify
Spotify.
Unwrapped, for each GitLab user for the past year, and somebody wanted to calculate that, I want to be able to have the information that we could do that.
Okay. Yeah.
We can't today. I to tell you right out of the box, that is not a thing that a lot of it we could get painfully and agonizingly. Most of it all of the pieces to sort of do all the in-between parts don't exist.
Yeah.
And I want to also be able to have more information, like the whole thing that we talked about already, like around profiling for Ruby and the JVL observability and so on. Those kind of things we need to have. And that's not a team that is asking for that because they don't know they want it, but they do.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, in a nutshell, it's a lot of like, we need to start thinking about how can we put the glue pieces in place to make these things work together well so that people can query data, for example, across
from where
different.
From where we're sitting, the thing that we probably need to do a little bit more of is addressing technical debt to be able to get there.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a hard sell. So that's why we're writing that document.
It is, and
that's Fluentd, that pops up Beat.
Pops up Beat or log structure in general.
Log structure, yes.
Log structure is yeah. And that is, we haven't done the same thing for metric structure, but once we come up with a log structure, we are going to have to go and look at what we call a metric.
We did better there. We did better. Migration,
it sucks less.
To Mimir, it sucks less. So we just need to do, if we get things from metrics a little bit aligned in logs, then we're already one step closer. And then,
I think logs is also harder just because it is much more arbitrary. Because you can have the cardinality, people will abuse that.
Yes, but if we can make them put it in a place that is in ClickHouse, we can do this. I think we can also do it with Elastic. It just doesn't work very well. It's like put nested keys there, and then we can do that as JSON, and then you put whatever you want in there, and we're going to work with our nice and pretty fields.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, in Elastic, I guess it's a question of which things you index versus not. Like you can have stuff in the source document and then just say, actually, I don't want to index those fields.
But people want to be able to query that stuff. So they want to be able,
Yeah, Elastic's actually slightly harder than ClickHouse in that, because ClickHouse, the way that we've done most of the testing schemas for ClickHouse so far have been to have structured fields and then an unstructured blob, which is the OTel sort of recommendation. And obviously, we would like to put as much of our stuff in the structured fields as possible because those are the easiest to find. But all the other stuff ends up in the unstructured blob. Elastic doesn't do that as well for searching. Like Elastic by default, like you give us a field and we will index it and search it and it'll be great. And you can turn that off, but then you can't search that at all.
Yeah.
And so that part will be more challenging.
With ClickHouse, does it still do some indexing on the unstructured blob? Does it do like full text on that?
Yep, it does everything. It's just harder.
Yeah, not just full text. You can do JSON things, and you can do you can take it one step level.
The
deeper,
queries are
going to be slower.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is possible, and it's at that point it's a problem that we can throw money at to have it.
And it's also a problem that you can fix. Like you can make things structured. You can move the data around accordingly, and So the problem is also, though, when you have things like, are we ever going to send everything out of Google Cloud Logs? Who knows? We'll probably need to be able to, right now, if we wanted to look at that data, there's no way to look at log data from multiple sources in anything even akin to one place. They're in 18 different places. And so that's one of the ones that I'm going to politely call, we should figure out something for that.
Yeah.
Which is my polite way of saying, I have a number of ideas of how we might be able to do it, but none of them are solid yet.
Yeah.
And I think the gist of this
Grafana
is
data source.
So the Elastic Grafana data source is terrible. It is the worst thing I have ever seen in my entire life of programming. It's really bad.
You're saying it's even worse than Kibana?
by a huge margin.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of a
But
problem.
the thing is, I was somewhat recently, a couple of months ago, I was on OpenSearch by for dedicated, and
Yeah.
that's what Kibana used to be, and it's nicer. It wasn't that bad. It's also much less data, so it just feels quicker as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the much less data thing is the problem. Um, yeah, I mean the answer is no, the data source is bad. I if you had, I mean, I don't see anything that we could do that isn't Grafana at this point in time. But the
Yeah.
amount of effort that we need to put in order to make that an actual usable experience
Yeah.
is high. Also,
But
some of it's going to have to be things like, I mean, business analytics is using Tableau.
Mm.
Some of that, or Snowflake, some of that data we're not going to move into our observability system. But for example, I, as someone who manages those clusters, would be interested to find the Snowflake Elastic Cloud cost dashboard from somewhere other than my bookmarks.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where it gets very, I know
I
we
mean,
need a solution
yeah.
for it. I just don't know what it is yet.
I feel like that part of that is also a bit of an organizational thing.
It
The
is.
fact that data engineering is so far removed from everything that we are doing, even though
Yeah.
the domain is actually very similar.
Yeah.
Like I've worked at places where that was effectively the same team, and there wouldn't be like a separate data warehouse for analytics
Yep.
versus for engineering. It was just like, okay, we put this into our like Hadoop cluster, and everyone talks to that.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the parts of this is going to be we're going to have to go talk to them and like try to build this relationship
Yeah,
and
yeah,
start the process of like, hey, at least can you tell us what kind of data you have so we can like
yeah,
provide some links or something?
yeah,
Um, and
I
that's
think
coming
we
back to
could we the first thing we could do is like add their stuff as a data
yeah,
source to our stuff, so other people, yeah, can start seeing
except
things.
of course the Snowflake Grafana data source is Grafana Enterprise only.
Yeah, I know, but that's a
Um,
solvable problem.
that is a solvable problem. Um, the other thing I think that is going to keep happening more and more is like, for example, the um leadership team is creating a bunch of dashboards of like how their organizations work. And one of the things that they would like to put on the infrastructure platforms one is GitLab's availability, which is of course going from Tableau to our stuff now. So all of a sudden there's intermeshing of data a little bit
mm,
more, and
yeah.
that feels like a problem we should probably solve before it becomes a crisis rather than after it becomes a crisis.
I don't think, like, I'm not 100% sure that availability calculation, the way we have it now, is going to remain the same. Like, we're going to have to do
Doesn't
better.
matter. They're still going
No,
to want that data, and it's still going to come
yeah,
from our side of the house.
yeah,
And I
most
would like, I
likely.
mean, let's be honest. If Bill and Sabrina care immensely about our availability numbers, that's good for everybody. I want them to care about that, and I want them to be able to find that, and I want them to be able to understand that. And I want those numbers to reflect the customer experience. But that also,
Yes.
we're all on the same page here. We like, I don't think I am preaching to the choir in this one of like, it should be different than it is. But so yeah, that's a sort of observability in a nutshell is we
Yeah.
realize there's a lot of glue pieces and connecting bits that we don't have.
Yeah.
And tracing. And
Profiling. And yeah,
tracing and profiling and some other additional way to keep thinking about how do we answer questions that we don't have the answers to today. And also, by the way, considering the fact that we have absolutely no observability that we control or can easily see to anything that happens before Rails.
Interactive architecture diagram.
There you go. That'd be nice. We don't have one of those either, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, there's a lot of things here that I think are a nice combination of including some buzzwords that people will like, but also actually structuring what we have in a way to think about how do we make this more usable going forward? And thus, how do we make it so that if you look across all of production engineering on all of the questions that people get on different teams, observability isn't the number one person who was asked the most questions in May? Because I did that math and it was us.
I'm not surprised, actually.
Yeah. Foundations was number 2. And then
Yeah.
everybody else was like way down after that.
Yeah.
So, because the thing is, until we get to the point where we lessen those questions and make it easier for people to do things, we don't have time to do anything else.
Yeah. I've got one more topic.
Sure.
Can keep it kind of short. I've added it to the agenda. So this is coming up, game days for incident management, which we haven't really done that. Like we have game days for DR, but we don't really have it for incidents. And we should have it. And so I've started working on that. And I guess there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Is that for everybody involved in incidents? So including SRE on call and incident manager, communications manager?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So it should try and simulate an actual incident. And I guess finding the line between recreating everything versus being a bit more high level and a bit more conceptual, that's going to be one to navigate. It would be really cool if we could capture data from an incident and make that import into Kibana, import into observability tools, and then really simulate some of the diagnosis steps as well. But what I'm thinking for this first iteration is to have it be a little bit more D&D and kind of have a scenario laid out based off of an actual incident. And then kind of inject events as they happen. So the facilitator has the script, they're kind of the DM, and they'll say, okay, you get this alert. What do you do? And so then you have predefined roles. So the engineer on call is going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to declare this incident. I'm going to get the IM involved. I'm going to start looking at these dashboards, and you can kind of go from there. I toyed around a little bit with feeding existing incident reviews into Claude and got something that looks fairly good. Like it's not 100%. There's still some weird stuff. Like it's still invented a way of doing sidekick throttling that doesn't exist. So there's still some weird stuff in there, but that we need to kind of spot check. But overall, it looked pretty good already. And so I guess having
so many questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess one of my questions is, and I'm clicking through the incident, but what is your goal of these? Like, what do you want from this?
Mm-hmm.
I assume a couple of things, but I'd rather not assume. I'd rather you just tell me.
I would say the primary one is training, keeping people kind of fresh and up to date with all of the processes, especially with folks who aren't on call as frequently as the EOCs are. And kind of identifying, on the one hand, figuring out, oh, this is something that a lot of people don't know about. We need to kind of make it more widely known. But also seeing where the process itself falls apart. So if we can sort of say, oh, I actually don't know how to do this. And then we try and run the incident and it's like, actually, there isn't a standard process for this. So keeping track of where you had to make a judgment call and feeding that into
Every
back.
single minute of every single incident. Yeah, you know that
Yeah.
part. Is it also going to be used for onboarding?
Um, I don't see why not.
I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like uh, the benefit of these things is always that you take the pressure off because
Yeah.
it's not actually broken. Um,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's not a substitute for shadowing, but
of
it
course
could
not.
maybe be a first step to kind of ease folks into it. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that.
Um, my other question, so going back to the like Kibana data thing, if
Sure.
we know at the time, we can actually like at least do a snapshot of that data that we could restore
Yeah.
somewhere. Like that's a thing we can do, but we can't do it now easily
Yeah.
for something that happened in the past.
Yep.
Um, I'm also assuming, considering all the things that you said, that you're looking more for like, here are the common types of incidents that happen, not here's a Rails bug that took Stan and 8 other people to debug uh, in the, at 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. I mean, ideally something in between where
Right,
it's not going to be like, oh, here's another S3,
right.
yada yada. But
But
yeah,
not something that is like, wow, I'm just here panicking about the fact that I can't find anything wrong. Okay.
yeah.
Um, interesting. I mean, I love this idea. Like, I don't know if I adequately expressed that. I just started asking questions, but I love it. I'd be happy to help. Um,
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
want to
I,
so
play.
yeah, I want to play.
yeah. Um yeah, so uh there's gonna be kind of a group of facilitators, and I'm gonna start reaching out to folks soon to see who wants to sign up for that.
Cool. I'm on the list. Sign me up. I will
What
facilitate.
what's expected of facilitators? Like that's the
Whatever.
dungeon
I'll
master
figure it out.
thing. That's
Um,
the
Contributing to the scenario development, even if it's just reviewing what is there and kind of um, improving it, and then running actual game days. So, I mean, that's going to be based off of a script.
I love the idea of being involved in an incident where I know all the answers and I don't have to build something out. That sounds really relaxing, by the way, and very unlike regular incidents. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things that we're going to learn from this. It's going to be really interesting, really quickly. Um, yeah, I love the idea.
Awesome.
Let's not do a random sidekick incident where a single worker is having a problem and we have to. I mean, maybe we should. That's probably the most common default incident I've seen, but
I
It's
it's
think
been
that's
quiet
boring.
still
lately.
worth doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are still worth doing.
And the thing is that because we have pretty good observability for Sidekick, it's also always interesting because you can single out the worker and then you
Yeah.
need to make the judgment call on what to do with it. Like, yeah,
Yep.
I think
Yeah,
like they're
that's true.
boring on one side, but they're pretty interesting, like from the business side of things,
Yep.
because you need to make that call.
Just thinking about things I've seen though as EOC, like something with Sidekick, something with PG Bouncer or Patroni in some fashion are going to be the
Yeah.
things that immediately like
Yeah,
and
from the ones
abuse
from
is
the
always an
true.
interesting
That's
one
true. That's
where
true.
like
Yeah.
some random thing happens and you have to go figure out that some specific user is doing something silly and
That
yeah,
happens less than it used to, though. I have a feeling
rate
much
limiting
less.
is our friends, it
Yeah.
turns out. Shame Donna is not here. She would appreciate that. But I honestly think rate limiting has helped immensely in stopping that before it becomes something that pages the EOC.
Yes. Yeah. Now it's mostly just imports.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I fed it, like I think I gave it the S1s and S2s from the last 12 months or so. And the ones that it picked out were, I think the number one was one of I told it to favor more recent ones. And it picked the recent S1 with like database related feature flags. It was
Yes.
like,
With the
oh, we
load
want to,
balancing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, we want to toggle off the feature flag, but we can't because
Right.
because
database.
that goes to the database.
Correct.
And
That's a
yeah,
good one.
and I think, those make for interesting scenarios because it's like,
Yeah.
here's the standard process, but it doesn't work for reason X.
Yeah.
What do you do now?
And
That's a good one.
I think one of the things that I think is so I've seen a bunch of these done as a pure tabletop format.
Yeah,
Um, and they can be extremely useful, but I think one of the things that needs to be a lot of them end up being very leading in a way that
yeah,
incidents are not. So I think one
yes,
of the things that has to happen for the facilitators is to like be like, look, stop talking. Let the people like give them the information
yeah,
and let them
yeah,
brainstorm what happens
yeah.
because otherwise
Well,
you
They
and
just
and if
tell
they want to take if they want to take it in a different direction, let them go
good.
down that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Like that's
yeah,
useful and
yeah.
interesting. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have to be careful who's running, like who's inside the incident for the script, because if it's too recognizable, you like that's how if you solved it the last time this way.
Yeah, but honestly, I think that is kind of how instant management works. Like
Yes, but
I don't think that's a problem necessarily if you're not leading people where I mean,
no,
like
I mean if you have the same incident manager on the simulation of we've broken the database
oh,
thing,
as the one who did it,
yeah,
Do you think people
then
have that much attention span? I surely don't.
I
not
I don't
unless
know how long
Bob
ago it
might,
is. I don't
Bob
know.
might, but like honestly, I have a pretty good memory and I'm pretty good at recognizing word patterns and people's thought patterns and things like that, and I don't think I would notice that on about half of them. Also because every time I'm in an incident, my only thing is like the worst ones usually happen at the absolute end of my day where I'm already fried and I'm just like, what are compute why is this the job I chose for myself? And so I don't think I would remember any of
I feel like that's like when you're rewatching an old movie that you haven't seen in a while, and it's like you kind of know some of the
it. Like,
plot points, but it's
I think
like
something like this
then you
is
see
coming
it and it's
up.
like, oh shit, yes, that was the thing that happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think this will be interesting. I think there's a lot of people who will find this very helpful for onboarding and building confidence in things. Um, and I think one of the things, I mean, if you want to play the game of something people should probably do with all of this is I don't ever look at runbooks documentation when I'm on call. And I probably should. And sometimes it
Mm,
has the answers.
yeah.
And I have gotten in the habit of not doing it. And I'm trying to break that habit. But this would be a good place to call out things like, hey, go search for things.
Yeah.
Maybe something will have the exact answer to the exact thing that you're trying to do.
Does
Um,
Florian's MCP already have GitLab search built in? Because that could be cool.
There's that code context thing. Have you seen
yeah,
that, Bob?
I've seen that, yeah, but I haven't actually used it
I've
because
seen it, but I don't think that enough people who are EOC know about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Maybe worth resharing in ESC general
probably.
as something that exists. I'm gonna do that.
But yeah, I mean, I
I'm
think
not
that's
logged
also
in anymore.
the things that the more we bring, like the thing I think that comes up a lot, and I've said a few times about EOC is that how much people disconnect from the day-to-day incident running when they're not on call, it's very dependent on the person. I'm going to take a wild bet that the three people on this call pay wildly different amounts of attention to ongoing incidents, ranging from almost none to why is Bob helping again? Not that I'm going to give you a hint, but like other than the week just before and the week just after I'm on call, I do not pay attention to incidents because if I do,
Good.
then that's all I do with my life.
Yeah.
I do that on purpose, but that also means that I miss a lot of things that happen in between. And then I'm like, wait, what? Oh, we're doing, oh, there's a new tool, there's a new thing. So I think that, so how often are you thinking about running these when you do run them?
Um, So we're thinking maybe quarterly, initially. I guess it kind of depends on whether we want to have the same people involved every time, whether we want to rotate. Depends how many facilitators we have. I think if we could do it maybe even once a month, that would be
Yep.
awesome. Um, but yeah, probably starting quarterly.
I think it could be a little bit more often. Well, it depends because I think quarterly is about the time between incident management shifts, and that's too long. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I would say once a month is probably a good thing to aim for,
that
but I
sounds
don't
like
think
that
it should
sounds
be
Yeah.
like
once a
a good.
month the same people because that's a lot of time and effort. And I also think that the more
Yes.
different people do this, the more slightly different viewpoints you get, and that's useful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'd also like to scale this out with the tier 2 on call that's coming now
yes,
to actually have leaders from the individual dev teams run some of the game days as well
yeah,
for their own area. So
yep.
that would be cool.
And that's the thing I think that would be like, I think that there's a really solid sort of relationship building, comfort building, understanding building that comes from making people who aren't on call go through these things and start thinking about things from that point of view. Like, I think it would be very useful for the dev teams um, because I think that there is often you don't think about the way things fail as much if you're not constantly dealing with the edge cases. And I think every time SREs are asked about things, you see that where we're all like, but what about this edge case? And people are like, but that's not going to happen most of the time. We're like, right, but when it happens, we have to fix it. And I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of them will be on call
Yeah,
soon, but yeah,
but it's still, and
very
also,
valuable in either of those cases. Yes,
yeah,
I agree, fully agree.
yeah, this will be fun. I
Cool.
approve of the idea. I think it'll be very entertaining.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Also, feel free to, I mean, I'm out for like 10 days after tomorrow. So don't ping me that or ping me as much as you'd like, but I won't answer you. But I'm happy to offer ideas after that. I love incident management and making it less stressful, as less stressful as it possibly can be, because I mean, I think GitLab does a pretty good job overall, but the more familiarity people have with tools and the more familiarity people have with the process, the easier it is to jump in and just do it and not be stressed.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was very fun. I approve.
All right.
Uh,
Shall we call it a meeting, or is there?
one more thing. Who's going to facilitate the next one?
So I
You did last one.
I did.
I
Does
can do
Igor
another
want to
one because
facilitate one of them?
Sure, I can take it.
Okay.
So, is it fortnightly, or what's
Yeah,
the?
yes,
Yeah.
it's
yes.
fortnightly, and we've moved it back and forth a couple of times.
Okay.
So you just look inside the week, and there's going to be a meeting on Thursday that Chance already scheduled, and just maybe
Okay,
move
cool.
it around so it so it fits for the most people.
And
Unlike what I've done.
the reason, by the way, I did not immediately jump into that is that I am EOC starting at exactly the same time as this meeting, and I can't say that I will be able to attend or I won't be able to attend. That's GitLab's choice.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll take it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All
Cool.
right.
Talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.